One of those things where people are always like, well, why do strippers need a discount? Aren't they making a lot of money? And I'm like, it's not about that. It's about the fact that, I get it. Like, after dancing on a pole for 6 hours in my heels all night, the last thing I want to do the next day on my day off is go on a fucking pole. Like, I don't want to go to the studio and learn more pole. But, we want them to feel like it's a nice pastime. They enjoy coming here. It might be stress release. It gives them a chance to enjoy pole in a non-work way. So it's our way of encouraging them to try it and just see if they can find something beneficial out from it.
You're listening to the Aerial Hour, episode number 22. The Aerial Hour is a show for aerial entrepreneurs and enthusiasts to come together, share ideas, and continue to grow our ever-evolving community. Hey there, friends, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Aerial Hour. I'm your host, Tara, and I could not be more happy to join you today. Today, I'm coming to you from Wisconsin, where we are visiting family and doing some much-needed work on our fifth wheel. Before I get to today's episode, let me go ahead and run through a couple of announcements. First up is make sure to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love seeing these reviews. It not only helps other people find us more easily, but it really makes my day and gives me that extra push to keep going. So if you haven't done so already, whip out your phone, get on Apple Podcast, and write us a review. And if you are not an Apple user, you can write us a review on Facebook as well. Also, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you are on Instagram, I tend to post a lot of stories showcasing what we do as far as move days, what we do en route, places that we stop, places that we're going, and all the craziness of RV life. So make sure to follow us there. And of course, if you want to know more information about the show, you can head over to theaerialhour.com and check out all the show notes and past episodes. Next up is it's actually almost officially 1 year since the Aerial Hour launched its first episode to the public. So if you heard in our last rest stop, we hit a year, August 28th, I believe, but I didn't actually tell anybody about the show on August 28th. I just very quietly put it up on Apple and Spotify so that I could finish creating those accounts. That's what you have to do when you make a podcast. You have to submit your first episode to actually be put on all the different platforms. So I put it out there and then I didn't tell anybody and waited until I had a couple of episodes together. So on September 27th, I believe, we will have officially been live for 1 whole year. And I'm just so proud of what this show and I have been able to accomplish in this last year. So I want to share a couple of statistics about the show and fun facts. So first up is we are about to hit 5,000 downloads. Woohoo! We are currently at 4,998. So by the time I release this episode, we will have hit 5,000. And it's just crazy. I don't think I ever would have imagined it, but I'm really, really grateful for every single one of those listens. This show is heard across the world, and actually we have a couple of regular listeners in Croatia and Germany, Belgium, and Spain, and Australia. Shout out to all of you. I really appreciate anybody who finds the show. We've got lots of listeners in the United States, but anyone who finds the show and listens, thank you. I see you and I appreciate every single one of you. Another cool thing that I saw was on Spotify. It shows me, which I'm sure a lot of my audience is on Spotify. It shows me what y'all are listening to, which is Marilyn Manson, Slipknot, FKA Twigs, and The Weeknd. Not surprising. I'm not sure what to do with that, but very cool. And there are a lot of you who listen until the end. So thank you again for joining me in this great adventure of the first year of the Aerial Hour, and I look forward to many, many more. My next announcement is this episode's sponsor, who is none other than the amazing Jeannie and Jade. Now, being a Florida girl, I have been a big fan of Jeannie and Jade since their inception. I saw the designs that Kristen was creating and completely fell in love. Jeannie and Jade create fierce designs to reveal your inner self. These designs include incredible resin art, keychains, decals, and more. And they're getting ready to release their Halloween collection, which features 3 sexy and very spooktacular designs. I highly recommend you check them out and also become one of her poll babes, where you can be the first to hear about new collections, receive discounts, access freebies, and more. If you want to learn more about Jeannie and Jade, head over to our show notes, look them up on Instagram or on Etsy. And now on to today's episode. Today's interview features Squeak Machine, or Jill, of Awakenings in New Orleans. If you listen to the show, I interviewed Squeak Machine and Brian Wolf for the Mr. Pole Dance America episode. When I went and sat down, I learned so much about Jill and how she runs her business that I had to go back and interview her just about how she runs Awakenings. So I finally had the opportunity to go back in New Orleans and sit down and chat with her. During this episode, we talk about Squeak's impressive 20-year career as a stripper, becoming an instructor at Awakenings in Philadelphia, and moving to New Orleans and opening her own space. One of the things that I love most about spending time with the Awakening staff was how much I felt like I was at home. What I learned during this interview was that some of the staff at Awakenings has actually been with Squeak since before she opened the studio, which I think is insanely impressive. Squeak shares with us how she continues to work to create a business that supports and encourages a diverse community of students. And again, if you want to know more, you can head over to theaerialhour.com and check out the show notes. I think I've covered everything, so I'm going to roll the tape. Phil, do the thing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aerial Hour. Today, I am somewhere again, and I am so happy to be somewhere. This is like my second day back on the road, and I am in New Orleans visiting Awakenings with Squeak Machine. How's it going today?
Good, thank you.
Good. So, we're going to talk about lots of things today. First, how are you doing? How are you doing in general?
That is a question with lots of different angles and answers.
Yeah.
I guess I'm as well as can be expected, given everything that's going on right now.
I completely agree with that, and I think that's where most of us are at. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, gosh, I'm so bad at talking about myself.
I know.
I've been polling for 20 years. Actually, my poll anniversary was in April. So over COVID, I couldn't really even celebrate it. It was my birthday and also my 20-year anniversary of polling.
Happy 20th anniversary.
I know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's just hard to believe poll has been more than half my life at this point.
Wow. What a cool thing to say, though. How did you initially find the aerial community?
Through stripping.
Okay.
So I started stripping when I was 18, like literally a couple of days after I turned 18.
Awesome.
Just because, my parents have always been like a kind of a tough love mentality. So if I want to go to college, I'm going to pay for it. A friend of mine was like, I know a really great way you can pay for college. And that's where the story began.
Yeah. And how did you get into that first job? Were you going straight into stripping, or I think I read something about like go-go dancing?
Yeah, I had been doing go-go dancing and nightclubs and everything, so I already was familiar with like movement in front of an audience.
Okay.
But that's not to say that I was not terrified my first time on stage. I had never done anything like that before, and that was my first time touching a pole.
Wow.
So performing on a pole in front of a room full of people was my first experience on the pole.
Wow. How have you seen the industry change over 20 years?
The strip club industry definitely has had, it's almost like a pendulum. Like, it kind of goes up and down and up and down. So, there's times where it's more strict. There's times where it's more lax. There's times when there's, a very strong political presence. There's times when there's not. It kind of just keeps going back and forth. Whereas the pole industry, as far as fitness goes, has kind of been increasing at a steady rate, and I feel like making positive changes at a steady rate, becoming more open, toward different types of pole dancing, being more welcoming of people of different backgrounds, and just being more accessible for everyone.
Yeah. And when did you start to see the shift of the pole industry changing, where it was becoming more mainstream?
It happened kind of slowly.
Yeah.
When I first heard of pole fitness, I was already a stripper and had been poling for, I think, about 6 or 7 years at that point. And when I first heard about pole studios, it kind of seemed, it angered some of the strippers because they were like, well, now these people are making a profit on something that they really don't know anything about. And some of them felt offended by it. But other people saw the benefit in it. And I did as well, as that we had now a place where we could be trained and practice and actually be a little bit safer. Because right around the time pole studios started, I had already cracked my tailbone, dislocated my thumb on stage in front of people, and relocated it in front of people. I had already had a lot of pretty bad falls where I was, just not doing something correctly or just messing around with something I really didn't know how to do. And so immediately I was like, okay, obviously I'm still stripping after 6 years. I want to keep doing it. And I think that I see a benefit in pole studios being able to give me a chance to kind of keep training and keep increasing my skill sets in a safer environment and with people who maybe understand body mechanics a little bit better.
Definitely. And where were you at this time?
I was in the Philadelphia area.
Okay. And what was the studio that you found?
There were a couple in the Philadelphia area, and I know Pole Dance Academy had started, and there was was it Master J's pole? There was a couple different places. Some of them are still around, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
There were definitely quite a few. None of them are around, so I'm not saying anybody that's still currently in business. But there were definitely a few where they kind of threw classes together to jump on the trend, and they didn't really have good instructors or a really good curriculum. So it was kind of just a free-for-all, and I, definitely had some bad experiences at that point. But the pole industry was still just kind of finding it was still getting its footing.
Right.
So,
yeah. And at what point did you decide, I'm going to open a studio?
Oh, gosh. I had never even considered being an instructor until... so I had kept going from pole studio to pole studio all through the Philadelphia area, not really finding a place where I felt like it was challenging me and benefiting me. I would go to some pole studios and I'd go to the higher level classes, but they need to make money, so sometimes they offer their beginners to come to their higher level classes, and then the beginners get a lot of attention. So I ended up kind of just self-training anyway. And then somebody told me about Awakenings in Philadelphia. And they said, hey, I don't know if you know about this pole studio, but it's actually way closer to you than some of these places you've been traveling to. And they seem to have a very structured curriculum. And they did, because when I emailed them immediately, they asked me a lot of questions about what sort of tricks I've been doing and how long I've been training and things like that. And they kind of tested me into the classes rather than just kind of throwing me into whatever sounded right. And so I stuck with there for quite a long time. And I was always kind of a loner in the pole studio, just because, I guess I kind of saw it as part of my work. I'm here to improve. I'm here to make more money, here to get better. And I would always choose the only pole that was kind of off to the side. And the reason nobody was in that area is because there was no mirror there. So everybody would stay toward the other side of the room where the mirrors were. And I would be because I didn't really care. In the strip club, we didn't have a mirror anyway. So I didn't mind practicing without one. And so, I don't know, but somehow Heather Swalek, she saw something in me that I didn't see in me. And one day after class, she pulled me aside and she asked me what my thoughts were of becoming an instructor. And honestly, the thought had never even crossed my mind, so I didn't really have a good answer for her. I was just well, let me consider it. I don't really know anything about it. And, she was like, it's okay. I mean, we'll train you. We'll give you all the training that you need. We're not going to rush you, and we'll let you shadow classes for a while. And so I started doing that, and then, kind of got elevated to, being one of the main instructors. And then from there, because I had started really getting into aerials at the time, I got put in charge of the aerials department and kind of developing that. And it just all kind of kept going from there.
And all throughout this time, you're still building your business as a stripper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and continuing through there. And you were competing as well.
Yeah.
And these are like major competitions.
Yeah.
Major competitions where you actually win money too.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about competing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the competitions for strippers, a lot of them are put together by radio shows who are looking to gain more following and kind of get their names out there. And obviously, stripping's like a big novelty, so it attracts a lot of attention. So putting a strip club competition is always like a good way to get instant attention, get a bunch of people together at one place to watch it. And so they typically have really good cash prizes. The lower ones will be like $3,000, $5,000. The higher ones can be $10,000 or more. Each competition is kind of different. Sometimes they want more just kind of raw, get up there and don't even rehearse, just get up there, perform, and see what happens, see how the crowd, responds. And some of them are incredibly, just a lot of work. I mean, Diamond G, which I've done 3 times, I won twice. And it's almost like a team. So you don't just perform by yourself. You need to have like backup dancers, and you need to have other people that you're going to do double tricks with. The more crazy and circus-like you can make your routine, and these are 10-minute long routines.
Wow.
And so you need time, like you need to have another person to be up on the stage and on something, because a lot of times I have to sneak off stage and change into another outfit, because we're usually telling like a story, or there's kind of like a plot, or just some kind of like, it might be like a theme like Avengers or Harry Potter or something.
Awesome.
So, but they're, these really big shows, and they're a lot of fun to do. But like if you don't win them, they're very expensive to be in.
Okay.
And, you kind of have to pay, your backup dancers. You have to pay for all your costumes and everything. A close friend who, she was the one that usually she funded all of ours.
Okay.
And she was just amazing.
Yeah.
And she was one of those people where she would, she's like, oh, I'm just happy to come up with the ideas and fund it, but she wants to have other people be the ones to perform these things. So
wow.
it was good that she was able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have stuck with those competitions if I had to put in the money myself, because it's just such a high risk.
Yeah.
But when you do win, you win big.
So you're learning in studios how to be safe, and then you're developing your skills in the strip club of how to be a performer, and these go hand in hand.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it definitely makes a difference. You kind of learn to be a little bit more confident on stage, and also sometimes some of those crazy pole tricks will be the things that somebody who was just texting away on their phone might actually stop and look up and watch. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I also think that it kind of makes for the perfect studio owner too, because you can support both sides.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, never thought of it that way.
Yeah,
but
definitely. I think that's such a beautiful marriage. At what point did you move down here? Well, because you're kind of still there, sort of. But
I still have property there in Philadelphia. I haven't been able to let it go completely. But New Orleans has always had my heart. I started coming here when I was 11.
Okay.
And it was always a special place for me. And anytime my grandmother or my mom would plan a vacation, I would always try to push them. I was like, let's just go to New Orleans. They'd be like, what about Italy? What about Spain? I'd be like, no.
What about
I just
New
want to go to New Orleans.
Yeah, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's so cheesy, but I mean,
No.
I'm a nerd. And when I was 11, I was really, really obsessed with X-Men comics.
Okay.
In particular, I was really, really obsessed with Gambit,
Okay.
who was from New Orleans.
Okay.
And so the first time I was able to pick, because my grandmother would give us these rewards where if you got straight A's, she'd take you on a little mini vacation somewhere that was just for you and her. And so the first time I got my straight A's, and I was in middle school, and she was like, where do you want to go? And I was like, well, I want to go where Gambit's from.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, I came down here just to see, is it like the comics? Is it like it's going to be? And I just loved it. And I kept coming back. And then Katrina happened, and it was a long time since I hadn't come for a while. And then a couple years and years after Katrina, I came down as an adult again, and I was like, I still love this place.
Yeah.
Like, this place is still magical for me. Like, everything else from my childhood kind of seems like, as an adult, you just kind of like, Disney World doesn't seem as magical.
Right.
Like, the novelties wear off.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the one place that still feels like that. And so, I don't know, I just felt like I'm meant to be here. I just love it here. And I'm so fortunate to be here, because honestly, with everything that happened with COVID, I don't think if my studio was anywhere else that we would have survived it.
Really? Mm-hmm. Why so?
Because our students and instructors single-handedly made the money to get the studio and to keep it going and to keep it running. I mean, the government did not come through for us, but I mean, my students were doing fundraising shows where they do little performances every night, at the same time. They would do a performance and they would ask for donations, and they raised so much money that they kept the studios, both locations, going for almost the entire shutdown.
Wow.
So I just don't know of any other city where we have that type of community and I don't know, just people really look out for each other here.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think it's so beautiful that you found a place that does that for you and that you can offer something back to the community as well. So when did you decide to open Awakenings, and what made you say okay, I'm here in New Orleans and I need to open this studio?
Well, because I was coming back and forth from Pennsylvania to New Orleans, and anywhere I go, anywhere I travel, I will go to pole studios or to aerial studios to just kind of get different training and work with different instructors. And when I came down here initially, I was really surprised, because I thought, wow, a city that is so accepting of sexuality and they really just kind of put it out there, I would have thought that pole studios would be thriving here. But the truth is that the only pole studios that were within the city were more just kind of bachelorette party hubs.
Right.
They weren't really doing a lot of classes. And some of the ones that were doing a lot of classes were so far out from the city that coming here to visit, I was like, well, I'm not going to pay a $30 Uber ride both ways to go to a class. So yeah, I ended up taking yoga here every time I would come. And I don't know, one time I was down here and I was just I'm always one of those people where if somebody complains that there's a lack of something, I always tell them well, then maybe it's your job to fill it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's your job to provide that. So I'm finding myself complaining that there's no good pole studios that are walkable from the French Quarter, and I'm thinking, well, I could do it. I mean, what else am I going to do? For so long I've been dancing, and I just didn't really have a good idea of what life outside of dancing was going to be like. Had been doing it for so long, and I had little side jobs, and I had a degree in things, but nothing really struck me as being this is what I want to commit my life to. And then I was just what the heck? So I talked to the owner of Awakenings up in Philly, and I was I think I'm going to move to New Orleans, and I'm thinking about opening up a studio, and I really want to still be a part of the Awakenings family, because I wouldn't even be here. I would never have been an instructor, would never have managed a studio, none of that stuff had she not pulled me aside one night, because it was not even something that had crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So it was really important to me to kind of keep up the name and kind of pay tribute to her.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I get really emotional. I'm so sorry. I had a similar experience, and thank goodness for those people that saw something inside of us.
Right.
Because, I know when I came into dancing, I was kind of broken and didn't have the capacity to believe in myself. And so when somebody was like, I see something in you, and now you get to do that, that's very beautiful. So what steps did you take to find this space, and what did you look for in a space?
Oh, gosh, that was quite a process.
Yeah.
So yeah, right off the bat, I knew I wanted to be accessible for the tourists, just because my initial frustration was just not being able to walk or take public transportation to a studio. But trying to find a space, in the French Quarter that was large enough, or around the French Quarter that's large enough, that had high enough ceilings,
that you could change,
yeah,
too.
that I would even be able to change. Yeah, you have to be really careful. If you're considered French Quarter property, you have to go through the Historical Society with every move you want to make. So I knew I wanted to be close enough to the French Quarter, but maybe not that close.
Right.
So we're like literally, I think we are like 2 blocks out of what is considered French Quarter, and we're technically CBD, which is Central Business District, which comes with a little bit more leeway and slack. But yeah, the process was really difficult. I looked at a ton of spaces, and some of those spaces turned me down. And now they like put someone else in, and now I drive by that space and it's back up for rent. So, so I'm like, ha ha ha. Yeah, good. And some of them just weren't like the right fit. Right. And I hired brokers to help me, and I got like, and it was hard because obviously it's a little bit difficult to sell some of these you know, good old boys, like the idea of a pole studio. Yep. And finally, I just started looking on Craigslist. I was like, what the hell? Let me just see. Maybe somebody put something up on Craigslist. And this space that, you know, that we're sitting in right now, it had been posted on Craigslist for all of 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so I messaged the owner, and he messaged me right back, and I bought a flight down and flew back to New Orleans like within 2 days.
Wow.
And pretty much signed the paperwork within a couple of days after that. Yeah. But this space had been a Katrina disaster, and it actually hadn't been used since Katrina. So it had no walls, no floor, no AC, no electrical, no plumbing. I had to do everything from scratch.
How did you do that?
I watched a lot of YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I hired where I could, but I didn't have like a whole lot of money saved. I mean, I had my stripper money saved and everything, but I mean, when somebody tells you take whatever the cost is and double, quadruple, whatever, they're not kidding. Like literally, I had budgeted like, I think in my head, I was like, oh, it'll be like $40,000. No, it was well over $100,000. Wow. Just because, you know, you don't take into account like, well, how are they going to get the HVAC unit up on the roof? Well, you have to hire a crane and get a permit for a crane to sit outside your building and put the thing on the roof. Like just things like that you don't think of. So anywhere I could, I did stuff myself. I learned how to do float sheetrock. Okay. And I did most of the painting. I did like all the exposed brick was not exposed. It had like plaster or something, so I had to chisel all that off and just clean it up. Like it was a mess. And it took me months.
Fucking job.
But seriously. I also, again, you know, New Orleans, even though I was a new person here, so many of my instructors, Dallas, Cassie, Ariel, like these are still instructors that are still with us today. They came in like every week, and they would be covered in sheetrock dust with me. So
wait, so you had instructors before you had a space?
In a way, yeah. Okay. Just because when word got out that I was moving down here and I was looking for studio space, some of the people that followed me on Instagram were like, oh my God, I live here in New Orleans and I do pole, and you know, we haven't had a good studio in a while, and I'm whatever you need, I'm for you. And so they kind of all had found each other, and then they found me, and we started having like these little meetups, and we would have these little pole jam sessions at one of the instructors' houses. So we were all kind of becoming friends and getting to know each other while kind of building the studio and developing the studio.
That's so awesome. Talk about team building. Like,
oh, totally.
What a way to bond.
I mean, like a lot of them, like their little signatures are like painted in these walls. So,
that's so awesome. Seriously, like great fucking job.
Oh, thanks.
All of you. I mean, that's it's not easy doing remodeling stuff, and it's a lot of work, and opening a studio, you know, in itself is a lot of work, not to mention all the work. Yeah, remodeling. So in the very beginning, how did you begin promoting the space?
Well, social media has always been my thing. Okay. I actually owe that a lot to Suicide Girls. I've been with Suicide Girls since 2004, and they have always like prompted us on like everything. Like they'll just be like, hey, this is the next new thing. Get on Facebook, get on this, get on that. And they've always kind of coached us toward it because they understand that making us like better at social media will ultimately increase their brand and make them, you know, a much more popular company. And so I think just with their training and just figuring things out, I've always like had a pretty good mind for social media.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of a easier time than most kind of figuring out how to promote and like, you know, so I had that was sort of an advantage for me. I already had a large following, so I think it was kind of easy for me to start promoting from there. But New Orleans is a tricky market because New Orleans is not like most cities. Social media and internet, computers, all of that stuff is not as important here. Flyers, paper, physical things that people can touch and see is way more effective here. And so that took me a little bit to figure out, because I was like, how do I get to some of these people who are just seriously like, you know, they're just not into the technology stuff, because so much of New Orleans culture is not going home and sitting on Facebook for hours. It's after work, meeting up with friends, going out, talking, and going to a new coffee shop or going to a new bar, or trying a new drink, or going to this new restaurant that opened up. So it's just such a like social community, like really physically social. And which is why it was not surprising that we got hit so bad with COVID. Like we are a city of people who want to constantly be around people. So yeah, I just had to kind of figure out, okay, it's going to be a balance between working the social media and then also getting flyers out, getting word of mouth. I mean, fortunately, Dallas and Ariel, they already had such a, like, they're both extroverts and they're both very good with people. So they were really good at spreading the word and still are. I mean, I don't know what I'd do with Dallas without her. I mean, she's just, same thing with Ariel. They are both just really good like, I know, shout out to Dallas. She's sitting at the desk right now, just in case you didn't know. It's pretty much where she lives.
So you're still in strip clubs too, and so are you telling those girls, or are they kind of like,
oh yeah, for sure? And I think, you know, it's harder for me to get into the clubs as much as I would like to.
I mean,
you know, and right now, obviously, we're not working with COVID, but, you know, but Dallas is really, like, she's really good at, she talks to a lot of the new girls, and she has a lot of friends there, so she's really good at kind of letting people know, like, hey, just so you know, this is a very stripper-friendly studio. Most of the instructors are strippers, so don't feel, like, weird about going, and she's usually able to kind of get people's foot in the door so they can at least kind of see, like,
this is safe. When you opened the studio, did you go through any training with the instructors, and then did you continue working with Awakenings in Philadelphia to kind of mentor on how to open up?
Yeah, I mean, Heather she helped me every step of the way when I was first opening, giving me ideas of, like, you know, the order of things, like, to do and how to start, you know, like, basically she helped me build my mind-body site, which is like a nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
She helped me with a lot of stuff. And then when it came to training instructors, you know, one of the things that I am really adamant on is picking people for personality, because I can always train skill. So I don't always pick people like, oh, this person is amazing and they're so good, they can do every kind of handspring and Russian split thing and everything else. I mean, that's great and it's good to have those skill sets, but you know, I can still train people how to do that, but I can't train people to have a good personality. So if that's not there, it's just, you know, it's not easy to work with. So right off the bat, I kind of always look for people who I just feel like are really good at inspiring others, making people feel comfortable right away, relating to people right away, you know, and then from there kind of just like finding out what kind of skills they have and then building on their strong suits. So, you know, we don't pressure any of our instructors to teach anything out of their comfort zone. We let each one of them kind of grow in their separate ways. So we have a lot of instructors as a result, because we have lots of different formats and not everybody wants to teach every format. So, but, you know, I think it's better that way, because people can really be happy with what they are teaching and not feel pressured to learn something that they, you know, aren't ready for or just don't really have interest in.
Yeah. And speaking about creating a safe place for strippers, how do you do that?
I think, well, number one, it's always good for them to know that a lot of us are strippers. And I think New Orleans especially is a pretty tight-knit strip club. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of strip clubs for the amount of people or the amount of tourists that do come through here, especially not after the raids and everything.
Right.
So a lot of us recognize each other. So if the girl comes into the studio, I mean, she may have already seen me at Hustler. She has probably seen Dallas at Hustler, or she's worked in other clubs as well. We have instructors that work at pretty much every club on Bourbon, so you're bound to recognize somebody as your workmate.
Yeah, definitely. And you also offer discounts as well.
Yeah, we offer special prices for our dancers, and we offer discounts for them. Anything we can to kind of make them feel more comfortable and more welcome here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where people are always like, well, why do strippers need a discount? Aren't they making a lot of money? And I'm like, it's not about that. It's about the fact that, I get it. Like, after dancing on a pole for 6 hours in my heels all night, the last thing I want to do the next day on my day off is go on a fucking pole. Like, I don't want to go to the studio and learn more pole. But, we want them to feel like it's a nice pastime. They enjoy coming here. It might be stress release. It gives them a chance to enjoy pole in a non-work way. So it's our way of encouraging them to try it and just see if they can find something beneficial out from it.
Yeah. And you also offer classes like Strip 101 and what goes into those classes?
Well, first and foremost, obviously, we always make sure that the instructors who are teaching the stripper style classes are actually strippers.
That's good. Thank you.
And we also allow people to be very open with having conversations with us. We get a lot of girls who either are aspiring strippers or very new to the industry, and they don't teach you in the strip club how to give a couch dance. Right. They don't teach you necessarily how to deal with difficult people. It's one of those things where they kind of throw you into it and you figure it out or you don't. And so we kind of just try to open up the dialogue as much as possible and let students know that it's okay to come up to us after class and ask us well, how do you give a couch dance?
Yeah.
How do I do this? And what if he tries this? What do I do then? And I think, we just try to mentor people a little bit so that they have more good experiences in the strip clubs than bad experiences. And I mean, that's pretty much the most important part, because I love stripping. Dallas loves stripping. Yeah. A lot of us love stripping.
Right.
Not everybody does. People have bad experiences with it, but the more people we can prevent from having those bad experiences, the better.
Yeah, and this increases longevity in careers as well.
And it just makes for better strippers.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it probably seems like common sense, but it's not happening everywhere. I think it's starting to happen more, and the more that we have these type of conversations, the more that it'll continue to happen, but it's not happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never been a stripper before, but I know I love to dance like one, and I've benefited from that, and I hope more studios start
I think they're starting to see that benefit. I think, pole, when it first came out, and this was years and years and years ago, but they were so quick to be but we're not strippers.
Right.
We are not. So This is fitness. This is not meant to be sexy. They were just trying to separate themselves out because it was a tough sell in the beginning, and that was the only way they could get people, was to be marketing it as fitness and not as anything sexual. And now I think we're starting to get to the point where we're a lot more comfortable with having different aspects and it kind of bleeding together a little bit more. And I think it's really important because here's the thing is there's a lot of women out there who can't be strippers. It's just, whether it's their careers, their families, their friends, whatever, it's just not something that is accessible to them, and it's not something that they can do. And, for fear of losing their jobs or, people getting upset. And that's totally reasonable. It totally is fine. But there's no reason that they can't at least get a little bit of a taste of it to see what it feels like.
Yeah, I agree completely. What are some other promotions that you offer to students?
We do service industry discounts. Obviously, New Orleans is a big service industry city.
Super cool.
We try to work with students as much as possible on individual bases too. You know, my biggest thing coming into the pole studio world as an owner, and something that I kind of saw as I traveled and taught workshops at places and worked like at other studios, was just kind of a whole theme of seeing a lot of the same types of people from the same income levels at every studio, and not seeing a lot of diversity in background or skin color or, you know, again, income level. So I was really determined coming into this that I would not be that kind of studio, that this studio would be as diverse as possible. Because the thing is that one thing I have found about some of the lower income people is that they really appreciate the space so much, and they tend to be some of the most enthusiastic people. And I would rather like lose money and give a discount to somebody who is maybe working a part-time job and going to college and has nothing to, like, they're working, like, they've got like $30 a week that they can spare. And I'm just like, okay, let me figure out if we can work with this, because that student is also the student who, you know, is coming in here, they're posting on Instagram, they're befriending other students, they're like forging relationships with other students. And so a person like that is so valuable to me. Money can't even, there's no price you can put on that. Like a person who is willing to just like, oh, here's a new person, let me introduce myself, let me show you the place. Like, that's hard to find. So I'm not going to lose those types of people. And like I said, I mean, we started doing community classes so that people can just donate whatever they can afford.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That's like a weekly thing that you guys offer.
Yeah,
well,
we have them several times a week.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we do donation-based classes for both pole and aerials. They're at different times of day. We try to kind of make them at odd times of day, just because the service industry tends to be more free earlier or in the afternoon, where they're going to work in the evening. So we try to kind of scatter them out throughout the week. And basically, like, people can donate $5, they can donate $15. It's kind of just whatever you can afford, donate, come into the class. So, and they're pretty popular classes. And I think, you know, a lot of people really do like appreciate the fact that we have them, because I mean, I can't, almost every month, you know, at some point during the month, I have somebody in my community class who like says to me, you know, aside at the end of class, they'll say, wow, you know, thank you so much for having these donation-based classes. I never thought I would ever be able to afford to take pole classes. So, I mean, I think it's a good thing. And I think, you know, if more studios can financially do it, and I get it, I understand why studios can't, because pole is not a lucrative business. Right. It's just not. I mean, we have only so many poles in the studio, and you can only put so many people per pole. And so, you know, the value of each person that walks through your door is pretty high, like what it needs to be in order to afford your space. It's not like a yoga studio where I can pack 30, 40 people into a class and, you know, make all the money. So, you know, so I get it, but it's one of those things where if you can kind of do it, run it like, you know, alongside of some of your regular curriculum, or just throw it in there every once in a while, I think it really does benefit the studios.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing else I can say about that. There's so many good things that come from that. And again, thank you for doing that and sharing that as well. Let's talk about COVID. Actually, no, I do want to ask you one more thing about running the studio. You do have a studio manager, Dallas, and what does she do for you, and what does that allow you to do?
Oh, okay, so I have two studio managers, Josemari, who's in Puerto Rico.
Please come over here.
Dallas is crawling her way over to the table right now, and Josemari is currently in Puerto Rico.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, she'll be back. But yeah, they are two very different personality types, but they are so important. I am kind of known for being a little bit of a pushover. I am very like, okay, like I am a yes man. I will be like, sure, whatever, like anything you guys want. Josemari or Dallas. Sorry, Batman. Dallas is her superhero name.
I like it.
Dallas and Josemari are really good at saying no and kind of just saying, okay, like, look, we are already doing A, B, and C. we actually do need to make money, so you need to stop doing this and maybe start doing this a little bit more. Or just kind of telling me like, hey, you have been on your phone answering calls for like 3 hours straight, and this was supposed to be your lunch break, so why don't you let me take the phone from you for a little while? Or letting me go on vacation to places like Australia where I can't answer the phone because of the time zone changes. And so they take over for me and kind of keep the business running. But yeah, they're both just like, I mean, I don't know what I would do without them at this point.
Yeah.
I just like, I mean, Josemari is really good. She's good at face-to-face. She's good with like interpersonal relations. Josemari can like pretty much anybody who's like really upset. She's really good at like getting in there and calming anybody down. Whereas Dallas is like, she's kind of like a little pit bull. She's like, you know, she's like the man in my relationship. So she kind of like, you know, she looks out for my well-being, I think, like a lot more than I do, that's for sure. So she kind of sees like where my stress level is, and then we'll start to like not even ask, can I do this? Can I do this? Just kind of tell me like, hey, I'm going to do this for this week, or I'm going to take this over for today, or go home, stop accepting private lessons. I'm going to take the rest of your privates for the day or whatever. Like she's really good at that stuff. So.
And I'm sure this allows you to do everything that you need to do in order to run the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like a 24/7 job.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's like me doing like one thing at a time instead of 6 things at a time.
Yeah. And do the managers work at both studios because you have 2 spaces, or do they just do one? Or
you guys pretty much flip-flop, right?
Flip-flop, yeah.
I feel like some days we kind of have it like scheduled out, but honestly, like I said, they're pretty good at kind of like figuring out when they're needed, because we'll have like a schedule like in place where it'll be like Josemari will be at the studio on Mondays at Canal, and then Wednesdays at Bywater, and then have certain days. But then there's also times where it'd be like, well, I'm just going to come in all of Thursday because the studio needs to be cleaned, like deep cleaned, and you know we need to like redo all the rigging and things like that. So she's pretty good at just, I don't have to ask her, she'll just like, if something needs to be done, she'll just come in and do it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember at Mr. Pole Dance America, she was like, the show ended, she was like, okay, everybody clean up house and get the fuck out. Like,
yeah, she will literally take, because I'll like be there and I'll be like, okay, everyone. Yeah. And she'll be like, no one can hear you, Jill. And she'll like take the microphone from you and she'll be like, okay, everybody. Yeah. So yeah, she's got the voice.
Yes. I'm glad that you have people on your team like that. That's essential. And it's so cool that she's been with you. Have both of them been with you from the beginning?
Pretty much. I mean, Dallas, we met like right before I really found the space, and then she helped me build a lot of the space. And then Josemari, I met not that long after. Wow. Josemari came to us as a student. Yeah. And then we kind of quickly were like, oh, like she's so good with people, and she's so good at like understanding and breaking down moves and just the questions. You can kind of tell when somebody's going to be a good instructor when they ask very specific questions, like, is this grip correct, or should it feel like this? Where should I feel like my balance is going to be? Like, and she asked those kinds of questions, and immediately I was like, okay, she's going to be a good instructor because she's really thinking out every single step. So yeah,
that I think that says a lot about the studio if you can retain your instructors. How long have you been open?
We just celebrated 3 years this space, and we're about to celebrate a year at Bywater in July, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you.
Now talking about COVID. Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you, Dallas.
You're amazing.
Just doing a log roll. Looks amazing.
It does look amazing. So when did COVID hit New Orleans?
I was up in Philadelphia, and Dallas and Josemari were kind of keeping me up to date on everything that was happening. But essentially, while I was away, things were really bad. So it was really difficult for me because I kind of felt helpless, and we were all of a sudden getting all of our bachelorette parties canceling. So I'm dealing with all these cancellations and just figuring out what's supposed to happen. And, you know, the city not really giving us a lot of information. And then they basically just said, okay, everybody's going to shut down. So it happened. We ended up shutting down on March 16th, I believe. Yep. And then we were only able to reopen May 16th, but honestly, not much of a reopen. Like, we're still in the process of reopening.
Okay, and it's June 5th now. What did you do during the time to keep your business?
Well,
I know we talked about
from panicking, and
right,
freaking out, and like worrying about like what, you know, how long we could even sustain being closed. You know, immediately we started trying to. We did some online stuff, but we just didn't feel it like it was right for our student base to keep their memberships going. So we gave them all of the content for free.
Okay.
We didn't charge it all for online. We did a couple of online classes where it was, again, donation based, and that let them decide. We just didn't, given the fact that New Orleans is such a service industry driven city, like everyone here works in the bars, works in the hotels, works in the restaurant. So we all found ourselves out of work. I just didn't have it in me to ask these people to pay more money for me to like freeze their membership and pay for stuff on top of that. So I decided, okay, we'll just give them online content. I actually let a lot of my students have access to like my Patreon tutorials and things like that, just so we were able to give them something. And then basically the way we stayed afloat was our students like kept rallying together, different groups, like different Mardi Gras crews, Crew of Ass, the Alien Space Squad. They
wait, say that again. You can't say that so casually.
The Crew of Ass, of course. So they run with Chewbacca's, which is a kind of a nerd sci-fi themed Mardi Gras parade. And they're one of the many crews in Chewbacca's, and they are Crew of Ass, and it's Alien Space Squad. So they tend to dress up. They do a lot of Star Wars cosplay, and they always have their alien stripper pole. So they have like a float that has a stripper pole on it.
That's awesome.
And so Crew of Ass was amazing, and they got together. They did this 7 days of ass thing, and they all at 7:00 every night for 7 days they performed, whether it's like in their homes or in the studio, and they were just like raising money like crazy. And lots of other students as well were kind of doing things where they were, you know, putting stuff out there and being like, okay, well, I'll make masks, but all the proceeds are going to go to our home studio awakenings. And my instructors were like teaching classes, and they were like, okay, well, I'm just accepting donations. And of course, all the donations are going to go to the studio. So all of that combined actually like kept us afloat. Like it actually paid all of our overhead for the entire time that we were closed. So that was good because the government gave us like almost nothing.
Right. So, and you, I'm assuming, applied for everything.
I applied for, I mean, it was like a full-time job applying for everything. And yeah, it was either because, you know, we didn't have enough employees, because we are independent contractors, just so many different things, or because the banks ran out of money and we just weren't a priority. Who knows? We just, you know, out of all the things, hours and hours of applying for things, hiring a financial advisor to help me, and none of it came through. So meanwhile, you know, I'm looking at the fast food joints down the way that are able to get that money somehow.
Right. So you are allowed to open May 16th. Is that what?
You were
allowed
to open.
We're doing air quotes.
However, air quotes. However, with like a lot of stipulations, a lot of rules as far as, you know, we can't really have public group classes. We can have group privates and like things like that. But we can't like open our doors to the public and just have people come in. They have to have reservations. They have to be booked like as a private lesson or as a small group private. We can only have, you know, well, they gave us 25% capacity, but we actually dropped it way down because our spaces are so big that 25% capacity is still almost 30 people.
Okay.
Which seemed like too much to be in the space during this time. So we dropped it down to just one person per apparatus.
Okay. And how long did you have to kind of prepare for this to open?
No time at all. Literally, the city told me 1 week that just, letting everyone know, Louisiana is going to make this big statement about how they're reopening and this is what's going to happen, but this is not going to be New Orleans. Don't expect to open. We are going to continue to be closed until June for sure, at least. And then on the 11th, changed their mind and sent me reopening packets. And I had no time to prepare. We didn't even know how to train our staff.
Right.
We had to kind of read through these packets and kind of figure out, okay, so they want us to do this, this, and this, during classes and before and after classes. So, realistically, what is each instructor going to have to do now?
Right.
And so we quickly got everybody trained up, but it's still been a learning process because there's just things you don't even think about.
Right.
And now we're having to kind of plan for every scenario.
Right. And so now, again, we're at June 5th. So you've been doing this for, how's it going now?
It's going pretty good.
Okay.
I mean, it's really difficult right now because we've kept all of our students' memberships and class cards frozen.
Right.
And I feel terrible because we definitely get calls of people who are like, but I paid for a membership right before COVID. I should be able to take classes. I should be able to get something for that. And I'm just unfortunately, we can't at this point. Just because if I unfroze everyone's memberships, we don't even have enough classes on the schedule to take care of everyone. So I would unfreeze your membership. You go on there and find that there's nothing you can get into because we can only have 8 people per class and there's only a few classes per week. So it's better to just keep them all frozen right now until we can start to offer more classes and have more people in a class. So right now we just have the private lessons and the small series classes. And, they're doing really well. I feel bad because sometimes they fill up really fast and then you get students who are like, I just wanted to sign up for something. Is there anything left? And we've been trying to add more as we go, but it's just really difficult because we don't want to pressure any of our instructors to come back if they don't feel comfortable. So there's only a few of us that are working right now. So we're kind of just handling the workload, just a few of us. And so we're trying to be careful how much we commit to until we really know for sure, how much help we're going to have as things progress.
Do you have a date? Is there a date for the next phase, or it's just crazy?
New Orleans, they're just kind of waiting. They're looking for specific data. So when they see certain numbers, or I don't know, there's something that they're waiting for, and then they'll announce, phase 2. But even then, even with phase 2 being put into place, it's hard to say how long is it going to be until people feel comfortable sharing apparatus.
Right.
And we can't really, open up our classes and put memberships back up until we can have shared apparatus again, because to have 8 people in a class is just not financially feasible.
No, right. Any ideas moving forward, how you'll promote the business?
So our target, we've always relied on bachelorette parties. That's always been our focus with where our money comes from. Obviously, we put our hearts into our curriculum, but our minds have to be toward the bachelorette parties because that's what keeps our business afloat. So I think right now I'm just been kind of trying to figure out how to get small group parties back in and booking. And so far it has happened. I feel we are actually not only booking parties out into the fall, but we are starting to get some of the local girls who missed out on their birthday celebrations and things like that, who are comfortable with a couple of their friends and are willing to do privates.
That's really interesting. That's not something I had thought about, but I bet people just want a safe place to go to have a little bit of fun.
Because there's really nothing else to do right now. The bars are still closed. The clubs are still closed. So, we can give them a space to kind of let go and have some fun. They can bring some drinks if they want for the end of class. So, so we're just kind of trying to promote that as much as possible.
Very smart.
And just work the party angle. And then hopefully once we start to kind of build some momentum, we'll be able to put more classes on.
How are you promoting those, if you don't mind?
Through Instagram and Facebook and everything, just kind of trying to remind people hey, we know that you may not feel comfortable in public with strangers, but you might have a close circle of friends that you've already been spending time with during COVID. And these are the types of people that you might want to have a little party with, and we're happy to provide that for you. And we've also given them like a lot of freedom with how they want the formatting to go. So rather than just kind of, here's the basic party package, if we're just like, if you want it to be fitness, we can give you fitness. If you want it to be pole and a little bit of aerial hoop, we can give you that. If you just want to twerk for like an hour straight, we can give you that. So we're just kind of keeping it very loose so that people can kind of be creative and let us know like what kind of thing do they feel like they feel comfortable doing right now.
I like that. That's really smart and something I had not considered at all. And I imagine with people starting to come back slowly to New Orleans, they're also looking for things to do here.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people who couldn't cancel their trips because they weren't able to get refunded from their hotels and Airbnbs, so they're flying in here this month and next month, and they're flying into a city which is pretty much still dead. I mean, Bourbon Street is pretty much still shut down.
Yeah.
So I think they're just kind of looking for anything to do. So, you know, at least we're able to give them something.
I like that a lot. Are there any certain protocols that you're taking within the studio?
Oh, yeah. There's like a reminder list behind the desk for the instructors of what they have to do. So obviously we're just trying to prevent people from touching things as much as possible. And New Orleans' main focus is not allowing people to like have like a waiting room area. So we removed all of our like seats and little beanbag chairs and stuff. And now when people come in, we just tell them to go take a seat at their apparatus. So like either at their pole or under their hoop. And then we already have towels and spray bottles and things that they need, like everything they need already at that spot. So they don't have to walk around the studio looking for it. And it's just theirs. Nobody else is touching it. And then we're cleaning surfaces and handles and sinks, and we have this like UV sanitizing light that we use on everything. And, you know, we're just doing everything we can. We are making it that the classes have to wear masks during class, which is hard. I get it. I know a lot of people who are like, I can hardly breathe in this thing. But we have been setting up little stations off to the side where we have the fans blowing away from the class, where if people need to sit in front of the fan and just sit and breathe for a little bit, it's totally fine. We get it. We're trying to keep the curriculum a little bit lower, like action level, so they're not feeling so exhausted.
And are you doing silks or anything at all right now?
We have one hammock class and one silks class a week, which is manageable for Dallas and I, because we're able to keep the fabrics clean. But at this point, we can't really offer any more than that, just because we do not want to have to do that kind of laundry.
No, seriously. It's cool, though, that you have other ways, that it's not just aerial and not just pole, that there's opportunities.
For sure.
That's great. I also saw a GoFundMe set up.
Oh, yeah.
That was super cool. And you guys are almost at your goal now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We did GoFundMe. We had all kinds of different things going, but yeah.
That's so cool. Now I want to talk about Black Lives Matter and what you're doing as a studio and as a person to address this.
So, I have always had on the back burner some ideas. Again, like I was talking about before, coming into this industry, across the board, I've just seen so many, and not as much lately, but definitely when I first started, pole studios really had a target audience, and you saw like a lot of the same kind of people. And so I just never wanted to be like that. And being in a city where, you know, we have a lot of diversity here, I was like, I really want to make sure that we are, you know, getting those people inspired to come in. And so I had talked a lot with my instructors and some of my students to try to get ideas in the past of how we could encourage, you know, more Black girls to come in, more guys, men, straight men even, to come in. Like, how do we start to get people who aren't typically into pole and aerials interested and feel welcome here? And so when everything now that has happened, I was just like, okay, well, now we really need to move forward. So last week I called a meeting with some of my instructors who are interested. They're already instructors who have been going to Black Girls Pole events and been participating in those types of things. And some of my students who also have been participating in some of those things, and just kind of asking them, you know, to kind of do like a little bit of reconnaissance work, like talk to some of our, you know, Black students or our, you know, people of color, and try to find out from them, like, what can we do better? Like, what what would make them more comfortable, what would encourage them to stick with our curriculums longer. And so we had a meeting to kind of talk about the results of these talks, and a lot of it was great. We got a lot of feedback from the students saying that all of the instructors they had a great experience with. No one made them feel uncomfortable or that they didn't belong. Some of them were saying that, they love the community classes, that it makes it affordable for them to come. But they were talking about a little bit about how, since the community classes are all levels based, that it tends to keep them from progressing as fast as some of the students who don't rely on community classes. So obviously that's something that we need to rectify. So we may have to just maybe start to make community classes that have different levels. That's easy. It's an easy fix, right?
Right.
But also just talking now with my Instagram and with my ability to connect with people outside of my own studio, I'm just trying to reach out at this point to talk to other, Black men and women and, Puerto Rican men and women, whoever I can, to try to find out what kind of bad experiences have they had in pole studios and aerial studios, to try to get to the root of the problem as to why we still aren't seeing as much diversity as we could, So right now I'm kind of just compiling these stories. I'm getting all these stories and all these, experiences, and I'm going to try to, hopefully make sense of why this is happening. I mean, I have some ideas, and I know, for example, when I built the Canal Street studio, there's a very good reason that the studio is very neutral colored, because I didn't want men to come in here and feel like, well, the studio is pink, so maybe this is not for me. I just kind of wanted it to have this kind of just calming, just neutral colors that nobody would feel like it was for any particular gender or background or whatever. So, and I know more studios could start to be a little bit more welcoming toward men, but as far as Black Lives Matter and stuff, how do we start to become more welcoming, toward the Black women in our community and the Black men in our community? And I think it's just going to come down to the studio owners really kind of training their staff and working with their staff to kind of break up some of the cliques that happen in pole studios.
Right.
And the cliques aren't a bad thing. They happen because students train together for a long period of time, and they start to, when they see each other in class, this is their time to catch up. So they tend to kind of cluster together. But coming up with ideas of how you can start to break some of those cliques up, because, if I was somebody walking into a pole studio, even as a white person, if I walked into a pole studio and all of the students in my class are hanging out and, kind of patting each other on the back and congratulating themselves, like, oh, you did such a great job, and I'm just sitting there alone, I would feel weird too. I would be like, well, I don't even know if I belong here. Like, everyone here seems like they're already friends. I'm never going to break into this. So I think maybe it's important to kind of studio owners need to train their instructors to start to kind of recognize these things, because these things look harmless from our perspective, but they're not.
No.
And so it comes down to maybe starting to pair your classes up and not letting them pick their partner. So rather than letting them pick who they're working with that day, maybe starting the warm up away from the poles and then pairing them up yourselves and putting the more friendly, talkative students with the more shy students, and see if you can't start to foster some relationships that way and make people feel welcome faster. So right now we're kind of coming up with some other ideas like that, just really kind of becoming aware of all these things that, again, it seemed harmless at first, but really it wasn't doing us any favors. And then also my instructor Amasa brought up a really good point. And again, as a Black woman, I don't know this, but she just told me, she said, when I'm at work, I'm on. I'm playing a character, she said. I feel like, I'm at my desk and I'm trying to be this businesswoman and the person that they expect me to be. And she's like, and when I go to the pole studio or when I go to whatever after work activity, it would be nice for me to be able to turn off. But sometimes you walk into a place and you see a bunch of people who don't look like you and they don't act like you, and so you feel like, okay, I guess I have to stay on. I can't just take my wig off and relax and be myself. And so hearing her say that, I was just like, God, And where do you even begin trying to make this happen? So I think the place for us to start is we want to start having a class that is like a community class that is specifically for our Black girls and guys, so that they can turn off and they can just be themselves, and they don't have to worry about who's listening in and who's watching, and just like they can do poll if they want to. If they just find that they just want to hang out and talk, that's totally fine. But I think it's important for us to give them that safe space and give them a chance to just be themselves,
Yeah. I appreciate you having these, like, looking inward and through your studio and talking to people and finding out what you can do to make it better, because I think that's the only way, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way that we
because people
make
are
this.
so quick to just be like, well, I'm not part of the problem because I'm not racist.
Right.
But, it's like I said, it's just things that you don't think about. I don't think about that. When I'm teaching a class, I don't think about, this poor Black girl who's walking in. First of all, my students are all corralled together because they're all friends already. She's kind of by herself. I might be giving her attention as an instructor, but she's still not getting the social attention. Yeah. And I don't also think about the fact that she's putting on an act to try to seem like she fits in.
Right.
So I never thought about that stuff.
No.
And so I think it's important for studio owners to think about that stuff
Yeah.
and admit a little bit of wrong. Like we've let some of this behavior happen, not knowing.
Right.
But now that we do know.
Yeah. And not just studio owner. I mean, just everybody as a whole. I mean, I think we're all guilty of not speaking up or not realizing that we're contributing to the systemic.
Even the most open-minded, non-racist people are still doing things inadvertently that aren't really helping or making a healthy environment.
I think it's just like you're saying, really looking at those things and then looking at what you can do to keep that from happening and to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So thank you for being a studio that's really, really digging deep and trying to make everyone feel welcome and comfortable. So moving forward, I'm sure that looks like, I don't know right now.
The future is so uncertain right now. I mean, of course, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep persevering. I will work a million jobs to keep the studio afloat if I have to. And I'm going to keep trying to also help other pole studios. I think, a lot of studios at this point, with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, with everything, they just don't even really know where to begin or how to help or how to make a difference. And so I think it might just take some of us who are starting to kind of figure it out to just be like, all right, well, what kind of environment how cliquey are your students being, and how is your format? Are they picking their own partners, or are you kind of putting them together in different groups? So there's just a lot of things, and I think, I'm going to do my best to kind of try to help other people as well. New Orleans studios, we've always had the benefit of helping each other. So there's only a few of us here in the city, but we're all friends, and we all try to do whatever we can to help each other out. Actually, another studio felt really bad for me because she knew I was really stressed out, and she wrote my COVID waiver for me with my Awakenings logos and everything. And so she was like, oh, here's the waiver. I'm just going to email it to you. You can print it out and use it. I mean, so it's just trying to kind of get more of that happening in the community right now. Because I think if some of us make a positive change, it's not really going to be very effective. If we can all start to help each other make a positive change, we'll see differences in the community a lot faster.
I completely agree. How can people connect with you and the studio?
Always through any of the Awakenings formats. So texting the studio number, totally fine. I am all about texting. Also the email, nola@awakeningspolefitness.com, or honestly, even just through my social medias, my Instagram, always feel free to DM me there. It's Squeak Machine. And however there's lots of different ways to get a hold of me. I am sometimes slow to get through some of them. If you need me very quickly, the studio addresses are the best way to go, because those my highest priority. And then from there, I'll look at my social media messages, but I do always get around to them eventually.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you again for sharing so transparently and offering so much help to not only your studio but to the industry as a whole. So Thank you.
Doing what I can.
You are. You're doing it. And now we're going to go out and do some more. So I think we covered a lot. We covered a lot of stuff here. So I think we've covered everything. So we're going to go ahead and close it out. See you guys next time.
Go team.
Thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Aerial Hour. If you want to know more, head over to our show notes page and don't forget to follow us and like us on Instagram and Facebook. I can't wait to share with you who's coming up next. See you guys later. Bye.
Dallas is like, she's kind of like a little pit bull. She's like, you know, she's like the man in my relationship.